And welcome to 60 minutes of unscripted .NET entertainment. Our mission is to empower the .NET community to achieve more. I'm Cam Soper, and I'm here with my co-host this week, Katie Savage. And we would like to welcome today's guests, Dobri Kolev and Dan Kowalski. Well, why don't you folks introduce yourself and tell us what you're here for?
Sure. Hi. Welcome. Thanks for having me. My name is Dobri Kolev. I'm a senior principal software development engineer at Delinea. Delinea is basically a solutions provider for seamless and intelligent centralized authorization to better secure the modern enterprise. And there I head the architecture department, building our next level platform. And I also have Dan with me, who is a part-time software or principal software development engineer, and kind of wearing the hat also of a program manager with Immersive Fusion. And we're going to talk about how .NET is making a difference for the company, what kind of benefits they have reaped from choosing .NET over other languages, and then show some code and do some cool things.
Very cool. Now, I remember you guys have been on, or at least you, Dobri, have been on the show before, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah, that's about 3 years to the dot, actually.
Okay. And I seem to remember, so this immersive thing you have is it's like an APM, and you guys do some really cool stuff in like 3D space with it. Am I remembering correctly?
That's true. That's correct. Yeah. So Immersive Fusion, that's kind of the focus of the company. I kind of I'm present and kind of really like the direction, and it kind of aligns with some of the things that I've ran into the past, which I'll go over in some of the content today. So it's a different perspective on visualizing complex operations inside our application. Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. So you've got some stuff that you want to share with us on your screen?
Yeah, I do.
All right. I get to use my new Stream Deck that my wife got me for Christmas.
Very neat.
So that was really cool. I just pushed a button on my desk and we switched.
Movie magic.
Right?
Very fancy.
Very fancy. So do you see the PowerPoint with the Lambda expression on there?
We sure do.
Okay. Yeah, so today we're going to basically talk about some of the decisions that Immersive Fusion has made over time. And I've just kind of been keeping an eye on what the development there is. And so we'll go over some code, do some chaos kind of simulations where we show basic examples, and then visualize what applications do under the hood, and leveraging a lot of OpenTelemetry. And so basically kind of tie it all together into what ways Immersive Fusion is exploring to show or visualize these applications and just kind of take advantage of choices made and the differences that those choices make for the team. So like Cam said, we're back almost 3 years exactly. But the journey has been amazing. There's been a lot of changes in the way we look, and also in the functionality that Immersive Fusion has been able to kind of roll out, and Dan and I will be showing some of that.
Well, can you go back just a little bit though?
Yeah.
Because I want to point out, I really grew my hair out during COVID. Right? You can see, like, I've got like the COVID mullet going.
You have the flow. I like it.
The artwork is still epic, though.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. So yeah. So a little bit of background. So like I said, I kind of keep an eye out or like help and advise some of the direction Immersive Fusion kind of has, and Dan and I kind of chat together often for various reasons. And specifically, we've known each other for a while, but I have been working with distributed systems for quite a lot of time. I was in Microsoft from 2006, 2012, and at the time I worked for what was called Health Solutions Group. And one of my projects there that kind of really opened it up for me was kind of taking hospital information, de-identifying it, and then having an exact replica that could be used for research purposes and whatnot. And what was obviously eye-opening there was that's a very heavily distributed system that I was working on. We got a patent on it, but it was it was basically like, oh my gosh, there's all these moving parts. I have no idea what's where and what's doing what, especially with like asynchronous processing. And then I kept getting attracted to complex systems like that. I went to work for LPL Financial, where LPL Financial does stuff with brokerages and wealth management. And so go process this portfolio and don't make mistakes. Congratulations. Then I moved to Thycotic, which is now Delinea, which is my current job. And my first job was to take a thing that would take operations from the server and execute them on the customer's network. And at the time, it was just one at a time, very serial. Like, go do that, tell me what you did, and do the next thing. And so I wrote this platform or framework that we still call Distributed Engine, but essentially it does a whole lot of stuff in the customer's network, from discovering Active Directory, or just network topologies inside of the customer's environment, and then doing all of that in distributed fashion and slurping it up and sending it up to and so effectively, time and time again, I run into these problems where whether we're doing stuff in the cloud or whether we're doing stuff on-prem, we end up having this visibility issue where existing vendors would just kind of fall short when it comes to like, well, exactly where did it do that? And like, what exact path was it? And I'm not saying that the information is not visible. Obviously it is, but the flow in which the user has to go through there and I'll show some of these examples in a second, is challenging. And so Immersive Fusion, and no pun intended, has kind of an orthogonal view. Like there's an extra dimension that kind of takes that and moves away from the spreadsheet term or thought process, like a grid that constantly refreshes, or you have to apply filters through, and like it runs away from you if you have a lot of data, to something more akin to how a normal process in your human mind would be if you're looking out into the distance, looking for a fire or something like that. And so the topic of today is kind of discussing the journey of how Immersive Fusion is able to get to that point, and then kind of also account for like the choices made that makes it possible for that team to deliver with such high velocity. And then we'll go into code and show some basic chaos, and also we'll use a .NET sample with Aspire for the demo as well, which would be kind of fun. Quick pause before we go the next step. Okay. Yeah. So just before we begin, there's some observability. I kind of touched up on that, but effectively, being able to troubleshoot what your application does is a key thing when you're a software developer, whether you're developing, whether you're in production, whether you're having a fire and stuff is just bouncing off the walls. Having a good tool is really, really, really important. And the Immersive Fusion approach is, well, we'll take a real-time perspective, look at advanced and ambient data visualizations, and just kind of really move away, like I said, from the grid type of approach, where you could it almost looks like a game, which is kind of a misconception that people get when they first see it. But being able to go through inside and see the operations themselves, the network topology that is all dynamic in real time is certainly really interesting. But again, yeah, I will be showing that. Whoops. Let's not play the videos. Yeah, so in Delinea, one of the things that we did 2024 specifically was to go OpenTelemetry all the way. That was because of vendor unlocking possibilities. In other words, go OpenTelemetry, open standard as much as you can, so that at some point we can just have the same tooling across the board, or at least the tooling that makes the most sense. And so that's kind of the direction that Immersive Fusion is going as well, by basically saying, you know what, embrace the standards, make sure there's no hidden knowledge, hidden sauce, and just get yourself started right away. And so whatever tooling you're using, whether it's the mainstream versions or whatever, it's the same configuration. Put an API key and the address for your OLTP exporter or the collector for that telemetry data, and just off you go. And so really the challenge there is almost non-existent. If you have an Aspire application, for example, you just fill in the header settings, and then you're off to go, which is, again, part of the demo. So how is .NET making a difference? It's a small team, like I said. I don't really know, Dan. I don't know if you know exactly, but it's, the fact that the .NET is used pervasively across the board is just translating to a huge development velocity increase. There's .NET with 8, 9, and every November for my birthday I get a present with a new release. That's very predictable stuff.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then overall, the team has experience with .NET. Like I worked with .NET at the first stages with .NET 1.1-ish, maybe earlier. Moving away from AFC, and so like that's kind of the story, as well as the story of .NET, pretty much, like David Fowler, talking about how it runs everywhere. Yeah, so it does. Like the way that this particular team is using it, yeah, most of the code, I dare say, is really .NET and used in various places. So the editor ecosystem, excellent. The what is built, like workers to process the telemetry data, the tooling about installing, running various things, client apps, and APIs as well. But on the actual client side, Unity 3D and being able to use .NET, a standard, libraries and .NET code inside of Unity is just huge. Like, take a person that worked in an API or a worker app, and then drop them into Unity with minor training about what it is that they're going to be, the nuances between Unity kind of engine specifics, and then after that they're kind of at home. And then Aspire, I just saw, like, one of the pull requests that I did recently was into the Aspire shop, and it kind of makes it more relevant to me, because the Aspire shop is great in terms of the sample is great because it shows APIs, it shows Redis and other containers just kind of rolled together, but it completely doesn't it doesn't apply to somebody like me, because I deal with a lot of messages, a lot of message brokers. And so he approached me a couple of weeks ago and he went, "Hey, look, I'm doing this thing, and can you point me in some directions on how to add a background worker?" And so I sent him some OpenTelemetry kind of reference material for how to propagate OpenTelemetry context from the worker to an API and vice versa. And then he ended up with a pull request that looks pretty cool. So I'll be sharing that with you today. In Maui, we try it for client apps, like installing the full-on client, but I don't know if that's ready or prime time, but it's not really that big yet. In terms of the tech stack, C# across the board, most part. Others, things in Azure DevOps like YAML, but there's some Python, a whole bunch of TypeScript for the client, for the front end. Is it for the? I think it's for the front end Angular application. That's kind of like not the 3D VR client, but the web mobile version. And then in terms of frameworks, there's the SDK Web, SDK the normal SDK, I think there might be some talk about using the .NET SDK.worker, which is cool. And then obviously a lot of Unity 3D and some Angular, but all on top of like the ecosystem. The ecosystem is languages, frameworks, Azure. The fact that the Azure Kubernetes service is so easily usable, either infrastructure as code or otherwise, all of those things just make it super quick for a small company like Immersive Fusion to crank stuff out. And so, yeah, some examples of those applications: the Immersive APM 3D VR client. That's a Unity 3D and .NET composite. And then there's the APM Web and Mobile, which is basically two flavors. One is the Entra ID, yet again, another benefit, like it's integrated with Entra ID, which I thought was really cool. Or the Azure B2C for people that don't have Entra ID type of thing. So then there's a whole bunch of common packages that Immersive Fusion produces. I don't know if all of them are used publicly, but there's definitely a bit of code sharing there with an internal repo or NuGet.org. I don't know if it's, I'm not really a web person, but I don't, ImmersiveFusion.com uses Razor files, or that there's a whole bunch of C# in there. And then difference docs.immersivefusion.com, that's using mkdocs, which is Python. But otherwise, a whole slew of .NET all over the board, and you can easily see how somebody can make lateral movement with no problem. Okay, so anyway, a lot of rambling. Why? It's all about velocity. These choices have made it possible for a lot of things to happen predictably and with good high quality. And it's really leveraging a healthy ecosystem that grows over time, plus the corresponding cloud offering to with Azure DevOps and Azure Kubernetes service and Azure container repository and all kinds of really neat things. So I'm going to take a pause. Questions? There's a bunch of code that I'd like to show you. And then basically examples of how .NET is used, or some stuff that you might have not seen used before mainstream. So whoa, that was an interesting. I will not do that.
It's an illusion.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah, I just kind of totally freaked everybody out.
First off, my reaction, wow, you all are doing so much stuff. My mind is already a little bit blown. But I am seeing one question from Jose in the chat, which is, why did you choose Windows Installer Wix instead of other options? Does it support updates over the internet? And he said, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't, my guess is it was Dan, do you remember?
Not especially. I don't remember what we
Okay.
decided or where we decided that.
Okay, it might be simplicity. Like, it's fairly straightforward to kind of ship it out. Like, again, for a startup, it's like, okay, what are the least number of things I can do, right? It's not a BattleNet experience where the thing just like, yes, your game will be playable, a third of the way through while downloaded, but it is a way to get. And again, Immersive Fusion is a startup, and make no mistake, there's a lot to be done there. But it's one of those, like, how can we get something out there that's not as fancy, but also not terrible? I would guess, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Cam, are you seeing any other questions in here I might have missed? Oh, I think you're muted, Cam. It's Monday.
Am I still muted?
No, you're good now.
We're good now.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there because it showed me unmuted. No, I don't have any questions at this time, but I imagine that once we get into seeing the 3D rendering of this telemetry, that people are going to have lots of questions, because I remember from the previous outing, this is really cool.
Sure. Yeah. And for reference, I think I just kind of flew by it, but yes. So everything I'm showing today is usable by whoever, right? So go to immersivefusion.com, docs.immersivefusion.com, or join Discord, and have at it. The client that I'm going to show today is 1.620, which is it's also the stable version that's available through the docs.immersivefusion.com site. So if you have any questions at all, Dan or somebody else will be able to answer those on Discord as well. So, all right. So with that, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint, and I'm just going to use it to copy some classes. So, what I'm going to showcase now is dynamically changing 3D and VR UI experience. And I think we have a good amount of time, so I might actually throw in the headset on my head and show you what that looks like. But effectively, the idea is this control switches the UI based on whether or not I have a headset on. So most games, and this Immersive APM is not a game, and I don't know how many times Dan has corrected me on, like, it's not a game, bro. But
Feels like it, but
yeah. So when you put it on, it switches the UI, and you get other things, or certain things are removed, and then if you take it off, it goes back. And it's a pretty straightforward class, but it also leverages this, which I don't know how many of you guys have used, but amazing stuff that very similar to what you would use in React and Angular or reactive RxJS, but behavior subjects and subjects are interestingly very useful in Unity, and this is one example. So let me switch over to Visual Studio, and let's see. There's a plug for ReSharper. So there is an observable that's exposed to the rest of the app, and effectively what happens is that observable under the hood is a behavior subject. And so basically a subject and a behavior subject, the only difference is that the behavior subject has a default value and a subject doesn't. So if I wanted to start out with false, I would just say my default value is false, meaning the headset is not on. But as it becomes on and off, I can start listening to events that the engine produces. So this is using the new input system. And every time the position changes or the rotation changes of the headset, then I will get this basically event fired for head-mounted display for head-mounted device callback that resets my timer of since last activity, and based on that, it basically updates the behavior subject, and other things downstream are listening to it, like the UI, what buttons are enabled, the armature, and so on. So let me fire up my Immersive APM. And so this is kind of the screen that you see when you get started. This right here is a tesseract, which is neat. But anyway, so there's the two options. There's the enter ID and then the social login. I'll use enter ID because it's easier. And I'm going to cheat in the interest of the demo. So I save time. Whoa, I did it again. And so it logs in and it gives me the avatar that I could use. At this point, I have the Aspire shop, and I don't think I'm running the shop yet, or maybe I am, but it doesn't matter. And I'm gonna log in and enter it. And so right now, this event isn't firing, and so don't worry about what any of these around me mean. But you can see the first-person shooter perspective. I can walk around and do things. But then if I put my headset on, give me 1 second. See how it already switched? Do you see the screen changed?
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I can just use all of the fundamental usual stuff that you can see and so on. But I don't have any extra fluff, and I can interact with things, and etc. And so now if I take it off, then because of that little tiny piece of code that I just showed you, it goes back to the original armature. And I can do the same thing. So let's say that you were like, oh man, I really just need to have some more headspace. I can't really work this avatar, or maybe this particular view is in the way. Drop your headset on and start doing stuff. And that's kind of the intent. It's catering to what the user finds the most useful. I'm going to take a pause before I get to the next demo and see if there are any questions.
Not yet, but I mean, there are certainly some reactions that this is pretty cool.
Thank you. All right, cool. All right, so this next one is a showcase of RabbitMQ client. So Aspire, and I'm just going to keep bringing it back to .NET because that's cool. So Aspire has a wrapper around RabbitMQ client, which is a NuGet package that interacts with message buses. I'm very intimately aware and basically know a lot about the RabbitMQ client because that's been my choice for some time. But anyway, it's a library that lets you interact with the RabbitMQ cluster. Now, Unity or a game engine, generally it's not like, you put a message broker in there? Well, yes, and because it's .NET standard, the NuGet package is totally usable. And effectively, again, we're just going to show based on there's messages that are incoming into the client, the 3D client. And then a subject is being used, and that subject is being populated. And then that data is now made available to various things. And so the example I'm going to show is this guy right here. So this is basically just a prefab that has a table in it. And if I fire up my, you know what, I'm not going to use Alt Tab because that causes interesting visuals. Let me find my Aspire. Where is it? Okay, sorry for the visual, but it will happen just briefly. Okay, so now if I did this and I fired my product catalog, what would happen is I'm looking at these logs that are showing up. Like there's, I don't know, some Redis thing, or no, I'm thinking about chaos. Okay, so that has to do with a little bit later in the demo, but there's log information that's coming from the Aspire app through the OpenTelemetry exporter, going into the Immersive Fusion OpenTelemetry collector, and then making it all the way down to the client and showing it to the user. And the way that that's happening is basically, again, with a bit of sleight of hand and subjects. So there's a receiver, which I won't go into because I think that's a little bit of IP land. But when a message is received, effectively what happens is messages are enqueued into a concurrent queue and then drained from the queue into what would be you know, the table that you see over here. And so effectively, the way that the code is structured, thank you, Dan, is it gives you the way that there's a funnel, and you can selectively choose what you want. So in this case, my example, it doesn't really have filters. Every time I get a log message, I will just take it and put it in this messages queue, and then it will get flattened and put into the table and show you this result. But I can conceivably take this and say, you know what, I want logs for a particular role. And so the role would be a Redis cat. Like if I look at my list of, you know, it could be, I just want the front end logs, or I want the token service logs, and I can just apply a filter and says, you know, if your token service, if your catalog service or front end, you don't show here, or you show somewhere else. Yeah, so pretty straightforward in terms of like what a Unity person would have to do, because of the power of .NET. Of like, hey, I just took a whole bunch of library code, shoved it in the Unity engine, and I can light up a prefab that all it does is it just shows content. So taking a pause for more questions before we go to the next thing.
So we still don't have any more questions. We still have plenty of reactions that people are still kind of like, wow.
Great.
You know,
Awesome.
I really brings to mind, to me anyway, the question of why more applications don't use 3D rendering, because I mean, obviously it like that space that you guys have for viewing things is I mean, it's very well thought out and I think accessible easily, far more than digging through like a bunch of different Power BI dashboards or something, right?
Right, and so it's funny you mentioned that, because there was like Dan and I were talking yesterday, the day before, and he was telling me about a tweet that he put on I don't know who it was, but it was about, you know, some of the Aspire 9 improvements, and maybe I could pull it up later if there's time, but it was effectively like, hey, if I go through the Aspire 9 stuff, and I'm looking at traces and I'm having a lot of load on this, I lose my track, because if I go to a log, a structured log, I'll show you. So I go to a structured log here, and then Dan, if I'm misrepresenting, let me know. But anyway, so I go here.
You're good. You're good.
And then I click the trace. I can go to the trace. So I'm looking at this log, 12, 32, 25, right? I go to this trace. Now I have a full page reload to see this. And then I go, you know what? I don't really want to do this. So I have two options. I can go view logs and go to the right, or I can go back. But if I go back, this is all different stuff, right? So I immediately lose my train, because and so David Fowler responded to him a couple of times, and I went, ooh, probably not good pick a fight with Fowler, but whatever. It was good. It was very, very good. And the exchange was kind of fun. But I agree, because if I'm looking at something specific and I have a lot of load on the system and I lose my train, I get frustrated and I go, I don't want to use this. And I only have it refreshing every 5 seconds now, but I can make it scream later on, and this gets worse, right? And so it's not really a minor, and I like how you said it, Dan, where you're like, it's not a minor UX improvement. It's a completely different flow, where, you know, I can't really do full page postbacks. Anyway, it's a tangent. But yeah, you're right. It's also very flexible, the 3D space. You could just we do all kinds of stuff in there. And incidentally, I think one of the biggest problems is it takes a while to build the foundation of your world before you can plop things in, right? But once that's done, you're like, oh, I have a prefab for that. I have a prefab for this other thing. And people like me can go in and just muck with the code and do crazy stuff.
We do have... Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Just quickly, is that 3D space something that I, as a user, would customize based on my application, or is it kind of that setting?
Oh, so there's I haven't really gotten to that because I don't want it to be overwhelming. The actual
we don't have to get into it if it's too crazy, but
no. You can actually see some of that building up. The top side isn't something that's configured. And please don't let me forget. I really want to go over this little tiny bloop here. By the way, Dan, please make this bigger. But there's a lost count here. And so it's from the perspective of the application, where it's not just logs and errors, but like requests that are published and then how they got finished and if they got lost. Like, to me, the lost message is actually something that I talked with my team the other day about, like, why can't we see lost operations? But anyway, please, somebody don't let me forget about this.
So our friend Frank Boucher did have a question real quick. He was wondering what's the cost in terms of system resources.
Ah, well, let me go back to Katie's real quick, and I'll answer. I'll answer.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought we were wound that one up.
Yeah. No, so Katie, the answer to your question is this part right here
Mhm.
isn't really something that's configurable. I don't know, Dan, is it, or is there any plans to? Oh, I found out something. I can go knock these over. Oh no, yeah.
Don't get lost.
I can mess with these and push them around. I think maybe not. But yeah, the rest of the system is fully dynamically generated. As you can see here, that's a real-time dependency graph. It's a real-time force-directed dependency graph. In other words, the more things talk to each other, the more they, oh, you can see it if you look down. The more they talk to each other, they pull closer together. And there's different views that you can just kind of see. But you can tell that the front end is talking to all kinds of dependencies, and the numbers are showing me. And so that's fully dynamic, right? That I didn't have to pre-configure this. It's basically rendering from like the type of telemetry that's coming in, and it's almost artistic because every environment's going to have a.
Well, speaking of artistic, did you guys use like did you guys have like an art team help you design like the assets and stuff that you're using in this, or did you just like figure it out as you went as developers?
I don't know. I think it has something. I think there's a bit of assets involved, like the Unity store assets type of thing. Like if I go to if I visited one of the platforms, for example, I don't think anybody made an obelisk, right? But the photons, or how things are talking to each other, all of the communication between the various roles, all the flying around. There's shaders, and there's particle systems. Like there's a fair bit of sleight of hand as well, which is kind of neat. But as far as this obelisk that you're looking at, or I don't know where it went. That's probably an asset somewhere. Yeah. So anyway, I will. Okay, so let me go back to there was another question. Oh, the resources. Yeah, the resources are let me just task manager. Okay, I don't know how this works with privacy, but if you see other processes you're not supposed to, hey, pretend you didn't see them. But it is it's 28% CPU. There's one it's not actually hurting it at the moment. For like, if I did want to hurt it and have it load up more of the Aspire stuff frequently, that doesn't really affect. And then as far as RAM goes, it hovers around 1.5 gigs.
What so just for like point of reference, what kind of system are you using here?
I have I do have somewhat of a decent machine with a Ryzen motherboard and CPU. It's a tough gaming setup, but I can do that on I was having one of my kids the other day walk around on her school laptop, and it was fine. And there's basically things that you could do. Like right now, I'm running on high quality. I can bring it down to minimal, and then just kind of really dumb it down. And if I put it on windowed mode, I can have more than one. So when it becomes idle, I love this one. When it's idle, let's say I'm just looking at one of the, like say I have 2 Aspire shops, one in dev, one in prod. Well, I can have 2 of those instances on 2 screens, and they're like fancy screensavers, basically. And if I start, and I'll explain some of the coloring here in a second, but if I start seeing stuff that I know looks wonky, I didn't really have to go look at a grid. I didn't have to go look at a thing I had to filter, right? It's like, wow, there's red here. I could pause time, and I can go look at that one, and so on. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, and we're working on. We've been talking a lot about trying to implement a replay, so we can go back in time a little ways. we're still kind of spitballing and workshopping how much we want to be able to go back. But for now, we just have the pause and play, and like you said, a glorified kind of screensaver you got for you.
Right. Pause for more questions.
Doesn't seem to be anything from the from the viewers. Viewers, if you have any burning questions about what you've seen so far, feel free to throw it out in the chat, and we will ask Dobri and Dan.
Awesome. Okay. Let me just one last one. This is actually not a thing that is done, but it is an optimization, which is kind of obvious when you're like, So there was something that we discussed recently, but it has to do with system diagnostics counters. That's totally something that's really used by OpenTelemetry. And again, I'm either going to focus on benefits of .NET or benefits of OpenTelemetry, because both are very big topics for me. OpenTelemetry has been a topic for me since before it existed, like open tracing, open metrics, all that stuff, even homegrown stuff. When I was in Microsoft, it was like, how do you do counters, right? So now this is the commodity stuff. And so this chart right here is the chart that is currently lit up by basically counters firing from various places of the grid. Now, the issue that I wanted to just kind of talk about and just kind of showcase. So this is the provider. Ooh, what's the name for the? Do you know what I'm talking about? The thing that the block. No. Where do you is it the counting control? It's probably that. Yeah. Okay. So there's no, it's not even it. Basically, the point is that is it the trace stage counting control, stream control? Maybe it's that. Yeah. Okay. So here's the problem, right? So let's say I am looking at time series data, right? And I want the values to be pretty fresh, but they don't all update at the same time. So all the sequences update in different intervals. Like so, I think this small, very hard to see. We'll make it bigger. I'm sure we will. There's published, processed, failed, and lost. Right. So that's basically full-on operations, atomic spans that have either been just published or processed right away because they were just server side, or they were published as a message and failed, or they just failed as an API call, or lost as in we don't know where it went. And so the current implementation is using a concurrent dictionary, which in and of itself is not terrible. But the issue is that every time one of those counters kicks off, so like this is a meter counter, again, from the commodity functionality, it goes and updates the concurrent dictionary. And as you know, when you call it, or you might know, as you add or update, when you call these lambdas, they're not serialized, and so you can have corruption, and you can basically lose a value, or not increment, or you just be off by a little. And so the idea here is, well, I don't want when I am getting the update for the chart to have to, number one, go update a concurrent dictionary every time any counter changes because of this event. Instead, what I want to do is take a snapshot of these basically behavior subjects. What is the previous value of that? How many was lost? And if you never update, who cares? Nobody. The update at that point becomes trivial because it's literally, you don't need a concurrent dictionary anymore. You have 5 behavior subjects, and then you just kind of pull from these subjects, get a value, and end up with a chart. So it's a very clean optimization where a concurrent dictionary can get you in trouble and corrupt some data. Pause for effect, or pause for questions.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I think we're good to continue.
Okay. All right. So the next thing is,
hey, Dobri, I am just going to, because you asked before the show, just for a little bit of a time check, we are at about a quarter till the hour.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I really want to go over some of the stress, and so some chaos. So this is the pull request that I was referring to. So what Dan is adding here, again, if I'm missing something, let me know. But basically, there's a new role with a worker that's being added. So it's basically a thing that consumes messages off of a bus. And then there's also something that's really cool, which is the ponder chaos. So if I want to introduce random chaos, then I can, in an easy way, do it in the Aspire shop right now. In other words, the shopping cart blew up, or the front end blew up. Like, what does that look like in the app? There's also an Immersive Fusion one from back in the day that's specifically for that, but I won't go into it now. I'm just listing it here for reference. There's basically an Angular app with a backend API, and you can say, well, I want this SQL connection to break, and then I'm going to run requests based on a broken one. So I'm going to physically introduce chaos. All the SQL calls are going to break. Same thing with Redis and whatnot. But in this example, I'm just going to use Aspire, and I will also go into.
Did we just lose Dobri?
I believe so.
All right, Dan, you're on.
Wrong. Oh, well, I'm not set up to share any screens or anything yet here.
The magic of live television.
Well, we do have a couple questions that you can maybe field for us, Dan, while we're waiting for Dobri to reconnect.
Okay.
The first being, what's the chart library that's being used here?
Hold on, let me pull up a few things here. Give me 1 sec.
Of course.
No worries, and like don't panic.
Yeah, ill
the kind of
prepared
stuff that happens on live streams all the time.
Right.
We'll just while you're figuring out, we'll just look at the cute pupper on the couch back there.
Yeah.
We'll noodle about. Maybe this gives me a good opportunity. I've been wanting to switch to my TV to watch the rest of this demo because it's so cool.
Yeah, Oh, he's actually texting me right now, telling me he's coming right back. So,
telling him not to panic.
Yeah, no, I'm not panicking. I'm just I've been staying on mute in case my dogs attack the window when a delivery comes from Amazon. They get quite vocal.
I keep telling my dogs we don't want to bark at the Amazon delivery people. They're usually bringing things we want. They think it's pretty shady.
Well, yeah, it's usually treats for them, and unfortunately, they don't get the fact that I ordered them some great stuff. So they just like to yell.
Just trying to protect you.
Right. Yeah, they're very protective, and they're missing their mother. So they're waiting for her to come back. All right, hold on 1 sec. Just trying to scramble and grab a couple things.
You're good.
He's like,
sure.
He's like, you could just sit here, be my moral support. I'm like, okay, I would love to do that for you. No, he's got me struggling.
Dare I say we've introduced some chaos into the stream?
It was right as he was talking about this chaos as well. So that's unfortunate. I don't know if you
click the chaos button and delivered.
Right. I don't know if this was a planned thing or what. I don't even know if he knows he's off stream right now.
He's still going.
He probably is.
Dan, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but one question I had is, can you switch it to that first player view even if you don't have a headset? Is that an option that you can turn on?
So you could zoom. Right now we're able to zoom almost to the first person, so you're looking through your eyes. it's mostly for the headset, just to kind of give that whole feel, kind of like the whole Matrix thing where you're pulling down stuff, grabbing things, pushing the buttons. And he didn't go into any of the different graphs and getting into the different fields of view where you can get in and actually, when you're seeing those blocks come down and you're seeing the greens and you're seeing the reds and the oranges like the warnings, and reds are, something failed. So as you go into this, you can actually, using your mouse or using your hands, you can check each one of the processes that are coming down and expand it and look and see what's actually going on in there. Instead of looking through that whole list that he had on the log viewer, where you're trying to find the information one line at a time, you're actually seeing it in real time and watching them come down in front of you. So for me as a gamer, my whole life, I like being able to actually see the stuff happening around me instead of just scrolling through, taking, hours and hours parsing through the data and looking at Power DI dashboards, like you said, and just really bringing, like, dare I say, fun into like a work environment. And it's just, it was started off as like a fun thing just to kind of work on and see if this can be created. And then when I met Dobri, he just kind of really just like brought this whole nother dimension and whole nother world into it.
So we do have an interesting question that came up in the chat. And so the question is, what does it take to hook up Immersive Fusion to an app like the Aspire Shop? And the reason I think this is a really interesting question is because I know you guys are built on OpenTelemetry, and I know Aspire Shop has a lot of OpenTelemetry built in.
Right.
Do those play nicely together super easily, or is there some kind of hookup that needs to be done?
So I know that Dobri did most of that connecting of that. And it did not take long. It's hard for me to really touch on the details of that, as I didn't have much part of it, but I know he was able to quickly whip that together. I feel like I'm doing a disservice right now with him not here.
No, I get it. We all have our different silos of expertise.
Right. And he is definitely, like, I'm the BSer. I could talk and just have fun and all that. And he could dive into the whole technical speaking on the stuff. I know it didn't take him long, but as far as what it takes or how much it takes to do that, I could not tell you. I'm trying my best to get him back and figure out what is happening with him right now, so I don't completely throw this down for him.
No, we'll get a little suspense for this question going, so that when he comes, we'll be like, we need to know.
Just attack him with all of this stuff. I'm taking notes and I'm ready to throw him under the bus immediately.
So I'm going to assume that, like, that we had some questions from Jose earlier about like what's the performance cost in terms of running immersive APM. I'm going to assume that his machine just like burst into flames.
There's no way. That thing is ridiculous. Like, it puts mine to shame. He's got 6 monitors set up. It's just like, I can't even understand how he does what he does with his setup. He's just like flipping through, doing all that. I mean, I just have a typical box that I barely even have anything in it, and I run it just fine. My daughter, who made an appearance in the background for about a split second earlier, she's thrown it up on her laptop too, just to test, just to see. And she has an Asus, just like you were saying, the tough gaming laptop. Generally, just like how he showed, turning down the settings, down the minimal. You're not missing out on anything. You're just not seeing the visuals as crisp and seeing the lines passing you by. And if you look down it too long, you could get a little dizzy anyways. So it's it doesn't require a lot for it to run smoothly.
Right.
As far as how low spec, couldn't really throw out a specific number for you.
Well, I was looking forward to seeing the Aspire chaos. Our other co-host, David
Yeah.
Hine, has written
Uh-huh.
the vast majority of our documentation on Aspire, and I've helped him out with some of it.
Right.
So I have a little familiarity with it, and I was hoping to see the Aspire chaos, but I don't know if we're going to get time now.
Yeah.
I will ask you something. We have another question that I don't think is directly related, but I think it is fodder for conversation anyway.
Mhm.
So do you guys have any plans on or do you have any tools built in to do any kind of analysis of the telemetry via AI agent?
Not yet. We had a brief conversation about it recently. I know that it's something that he feels pretty strongly about, that Dobri feels pretty strongly about. And again, I'm gonna fail and fail miserably with having a great answer.
Mhm.
But there has been some discussion as far as how far we're going to go into that, or it's hard to get away from the AI right now. So like,
Right.
it's gonna be a part of it at some point, I would assume.
Mhm.
How soon that is, or depending on how well things start to go, if we can integrate that right away or down the line. If it's going to succeed, it's going to have to happen at some point. Like, there's no way around it. But as of right now, we've not really started to introduce any of that into the environment.
So, and the other thing that I wanted to ask about was you guys have, so you're if I remember right, you are a product that is it completely closed source, or is it open source with a licensing model? Oh, Dobri's back. I'll add
Oh, you
Dobri
got
back
in?
in.
Oh, whew.
So
Oh, my
Dobri,
heart.
yeah, no, so you owe Dan lunch just
There
for
it is.
starters.
So sorry. Like I don't. This was probably one of the most frustrating things for me. It was the Aspire browser window was attached to this tab, and when I killed the Aspire app, it killed this. And I've been talking for.
I knew he was still talking. I tried to call him multiple times. He was just talking to the screen. I could just feel it. I just sensed it from here.
How long was I gone for? What?
About 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Have
Not
awful
Not
answers
too
to
long.
questions that you would have done great with.
Yeah. No,
You were
Dan
grilling
did a
Dan.
great job with the improvised vamping, right? You know, like so.
Okay.
We could circle
Unfortunately,
back
we
up.
are kind of running down on time. So,
Yeah.
completely not your fault, Dobri. Don't. It happens. Like I've been fighting for whatever reason this whole hour. I've been fighting Edge. It just spikes my CPU to 100% for no reason. So things get weird. So things happen. Certainly, we are at the end of the hour. So why don't you tell us more about where to find the demo for your application and how to get started on it if people are interested. And I would like to take this moment to invite you to come back and do your chaos demonstration, because I was really excited about that. I'm really into Aspire, so I was looking forward to that.
He introduced chaos for sure.
Mhm.
It worked.
Yeah, you hit the chaos button and just aimed it at the wrong thing.
Yes, he aimed it right at me.
Yeah. Next time, I'm not going to use that same browser for Aspire. Darn it. Well, incidentally, there is. Okay, so am I sharing? Now
You are not.
I'm all
Careful.
confused and scared. Okay, entire screen. Okay, now it's gonna go crazy with the. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is where all of these kind of walkthroughs. There's a YouTube channel, but effectively, if you go to the docs site and you want to go to Discord, get some help, you want to get some YouTube, and there's a really nice YouTube that I think the team pushed out that is basically the APM experience and the basically some champion testimonial stuff. But there's the extended APM experience, and then there's the what do you do from like, what if, if you have Aspire? So there's a bunch of playlists and things. I think I'm kind of having a rough time finding them, but they're explainers. And let's see, Microsoft Aspire is one of those. Where is it? Where is it, Dan? Yeah, there. Integration with Aspire. So, but anyway, first place is go to Discord if you need help, or if you wanted to just get started. The docs also are very good at kind of walking you through the how you want to do it, whether you want to do set up step-by-step instructions with Office 365, and then it walks you through installing and getting it started. Again, it's one of the main things I want to showcase, and this is a difference from last time we talked. It was that this is language agnostic. It doesn't matter what you use. It as long as it speaks OpenTelemetry, you can get going. So
Amazing.
One of the if you go to immersivefusion.com and go to tour, it walks you all through that. Talks about why you should ditch the spreadsheet and go to 3D. There's some comparisons with like conventional view and whatnot, and then at the end of it, you can start your subscription, which essentially is free. What I showed today was absolutely, you can do that for free. The only downside is there's no SLA, and then there's paid plans, and cancel anytime you want. It's metered.
Very cool. Very cool. So, first of all, I apologize for your demo difficulties. It happens. Don't worry about it. Please come back and show us that demo, because I really want to see it, and I'll make sure I host. With that, hopefully I have a note somewhere with the script for the outro. There it is. Thank you, everyone, for watching on .NET Live. I want to thank our guests, Dobri and Dan. Check out Immersive APM. It's really cool. Of course, we've had them on the show twice, and it always gets a warm welcome. And I certainly hope you guys come back again. To the viewers, check out our other great .NET Live TV streams and videos at .NET Whack Live. And tune in next week when Jan Kalis is going to join the show. And I forgot, so the banner that I have that I'm running it, wrong banner. This banner, don't ignore this. No, I don't, that's not what he's talking about. I didn't update what he's talking about. So, but Jan Kalis, who is a Microsoft employee, will be on the show next time, and we will see you then. Have a good week, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow.